The sun blazed high in the sky over the bustling streets of New Orleans, casting long shadows that flickered as people hurried about their lives. Among the throng of pedestrians was 13-year-old Malik Johnson, a wiry boy with deep brown skin, sharp eyes that seemed to miss nothing, and a perpetual determination etched on his face. Life hadn't been easy for Malik, but he carried himself with a quiet resilience that made him stand out in the neighborhood. The streets were alive with a symphony of sound, vendors hawking their goods, car horns blaring, and snippets of jazz drifting from a street performer's saxophone. Malik's bare feet padded softly against the pavement as he clutched a brown paper bag containing bread and a jar of peanut butter, the evening's meal for him and his younger sister, Amina. As he walked past the corner of Elm Street, something caught his eye. A frail old woman sat on the ground, wrapped in a tattered gray shawl. Her silver hair spilled out in messy strands, and her trembling hands clutched an empty cup. Her gaze was downcast, avoiding the pitying or indifferent looks of passers-by. Malik hesitated. His own family had barely enough to get by. Amina's school fees were overdue, and their mother worked double shifts at the diner. Still, something about the woman's hunched figure tugged at his heart. "Excuse me, ma'am," Malik said softly, kneeling beside her. The woman looked up, her eyes dull and tired, but they softened slightly at his presence. "Are you hungry?" She nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "Haven't eaten in 2 days." Malik glanced at the bag in his hand. He didn't think twice. Unwrapping the bread and opening the peanut butter, he carefully made her a sandwich. "Here, eat this," he said, holding it out to her. She accepted it with shaking hands, tears welling up in her eyes. "Bless you, child," she murmured, her voice thick with gratitude. Malik smiled, a small, shy expression that lit up his face. "It's not much, but I hope it helps," he replied. As Malik stood to leave, the woman reached out and grasped his hand. Her grip was surprisingly strong for someone so frail. "What's your name, boy?" she asked, her gaze piercing now, as though trying to see straight into his soul. "Malik, ma'am," he said, gently pulling his hand away. "I gotta go now, but you take care, okay?" The old woman watched him as he disappeared down the street, her expression unreadable. That night, Malik thought no more of the encounter. But unknown to him, the old woman wasn't who she seemed to be. Beneath the tattered shawl and carefully applied grime was Evelyn Cartwright, a billionaire philanthropist who had been conducting a private experiment. She had grown weary of people's greed and insincerity, and she had taken to the streets disguised as a beggar, searching for genuine kindness. Malik's selfless act had struck a chord within her, and Evelyn knew she had found something extraordinary. With her mind racing, she returned to her penthouse that evening, already planning how to repay the boy's kindness in ways he could never imagine. The next morning, Malik woke to the sound of his younger sister, Amina, giggling softly in the corner of their small apartment. She was huddled under a fraying blanket, playing with the lone stuffed bear Malik had managed to salvage for her birthday the previous year. The sun streamed through the cracks in their window, bathing the room in a warm, golden glow. "Good morning, big brother," Amina chirped. Her voice was bright, her optimism a sharp contrast to the peeling paint on the walls and the persistent hum of the city outside. "Morning, Squirt," Malik replied, ruffling her hair before heading to the kitchen, a narrow counter with mismatched cabinets. Breakfast would be sparse again, but he didn't let Amina see his worry. He hummed a tune as he prepared a bowl of cereal, pouring the last of the milk and handing it to her. "You're not eating?" she asked, her big brown eyes narrowing suspiciously. "I already ate," Malik lied with a grin, patting his stomach. "I'm stuffed." Just as Amina was about to protest, a sharp knock at the door startled them both. Visitors were rare, and Malik's heart raced as he approached. "Who is it?" he called. "Delivery," a firm voice answered. Malik opened the door cautiously, and his eyes widened at the sight before him. A man in a crisp black suit stood there, holding an elegant envelope embossed with gold trim. Behind him was a black car with tinted windows, its sleek frame glinting in the sunlight. "This is for you, young man," the stranger said, handing Malik the envelope. Malik hesitated, glancing at Amina, who had crept up behind him. The man smiled reassuringly. "No harm intended. Just open it." Inside the envelope was a handwritten note on thick, expensive paper. "Dear Malik, your kindness has not gone unnoticed. Meet me at Café Lumière on Canal Street at noon today. Come as you are. Sincerely, a grateful friend." Malik frowned. The handwriting was elegant, but the message was cryptic. Amina tugged on his sleeve. "What does it say?" "Nothing important," he lied again, folding the note and tucking it into his pocket. He didn't want to alarm her, but inside, curiosity churned. Who would send something like this? By noon, Malik stood outside Café Lumière, his nerves prickling. The café was unlike anything he had ever seen. Polished glass windows, marble tables, and customers dressed in sharp suits and flowing dresses. He felt out of place in his worn jeans and faded t-shirt, but he pushed the door open, the faint aroma of fresh coffee and pastries filling his senses. "Malik Johnson?" a voice called. He turned to see the old woman from the day before, now transformed. Gone were the tattered shawl and grime. She was dressed in a sleek navy blue dress, her hair elegantly styled. Malik's mouth dropped open. You're the lady from the street." The woman chuckled, her eyes sparkling. "And you're the boy who gave me his dinner. Sit down, Maliki. We have much to discuss." Malik obeyed, though his mind raced with questions. She introduced herself as Evelyn Cartwright, a name he vaguely recognized from news headlines about billionaires and philanthropy. "I was testing something," Evelyn explained, her voice soft but commanding. "I've been on the streets for weeks, trying to find someone who would help without expecting anything in return. You, Malik, are the only one who did." Malik shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't do it for a reward or anything. You just looked like you needed help." Evelyn smiled warmly. "Exactly. That's what makes you special. And because of that, I'd like to help you and your family." Malik blinked, unsure if he'd heard her correctly. "Help us? How?" "Any way you need," Evelyn said. "A new home, education for your sister, financial support for your mother. Tell me what you need, and I'll make it happen." Malik stared at her, stunned. "Why me? I'm just a kid." "Sometimes it takes someone with very little to remind the rest of us what it means to give," Evelyn said, leaning forward. "You gave me hope, Malik. Now, let me give you a future." And as they spoke, Evelyn's driver discreetly delivered a care package to Malik's apartment, a box filled with fresh groceries, toys for Amina, and an envelope of cash for their mother. Evelyn knew this was only the beginning of her plan to repay Malik's kindness, but for now she watched as the boy's walls of skepticism slowly began to crumble. Malik didn't fully understand what this woman wanted or why she was doing this, but deep down, he felt something he hadn't in a long time: hope. The sound of sizzling bacon filled the Johnson family's tiny apartment. It was a luxury Malik hadn't tasted in months, and the smell alone made his stomach rumble. Amina sat at the table, swinging her legs excitedly as she stared at the spread of food in front of her: eggs, fresh fruit, bread, and a stack of pancakes dripping with syrup. "Where did this all come from?" "Their mother, Ms. Lila Johnson asked, her voice cautious. She stood in the doorway, still wearing her diner uniform. Her eyes darted to Malik, who avoided her gaze. "It's a gift," Malik said hesitantly, "from someone I helped yesterday." "A gift? From who?" "Miss..." Lila's voice grew sharp. "You know I don't like charity, Malik. We're doing fine on our own." Malik wanted to argue, but before he could speak, there was another knock at the door. Everyone froze. Visitors weren't common, let alone 2 in 2 days. Malik hesitated, then opened the door to reveal Evelyn Cartwright, dressed impeccably in a cream-colored suit. She smiled warmly. "Good morning, Malik," she greeted, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Her presence seemed to fill the cramped apartment. "And you must be Ms. Johnson." Ms. Lila frowned. "Who are you?" "My name is Evelyn Cartwright," she said, offering her hand. "I'm here because of your son." "What about my son?" Lila's tone was wary, protective. Evelyn gestured for them to sit. "May I explain?" Reluctantly, Lila nodded, and Evelyn began recounting the events of the previous day. She spoke of Malik's kindness, his selflessness, and how his gesture had moved her deeply. "I've met many people in my life," Evelyn said, her voice soft but firm. "People with money, power, and influence. But few possess the heart your son has. Malik didn't know who I was, and he didn't care. He gave what little he had to help a stranger." Lila glanced at Malik, her expression unreadable. Amina, meanwhile, beamed proudly at her brother. "I want to help your family," Evelyn continued. "You've worked hard, Ms. Johnson, but I know it hasn't been easy. I'd like to provide a home for you, a place where you can breathe a little easier, and I'd like to cover Malik and Amina's education expenses." Lila's jaw tightened. "We don't take handouts, Ms. Cartwright. We've always made do on our own." "It's not a handout," Evelyn replied calmly. "It's an investment. Your son reminded me of something important, the value of compassion. This is my way of honoring that lesson." Silence filled the room. Malik stared at his mother, willing her to understand. He knew how much she hated relying on others, but he also knew how much she struggled to keep them afloat. Amina broke the tension. "Mom, can we at least say thank you? Look at all this food." Lila sighed, running a hand through her hair. "You're serious about this?" "Entirely," Evelyn said. "I've already taken the liberty of arranging a few things." Before Lila could protest, Evelyn handed her an envelope. Inside was a set of keys and an address for a modest but comfortable townhouse in a safe neighborhood. Malik leaned over to peek, his heart racing. "This isn't some trick, is it?" Lila asked, her voice trembling. Evelyn shook her head. "I assure you, it's genuine. The house is yours, no strings attached. And if you'd like, I can also arrange for job opportunities that better suit your skills." Tears welled in Lila's eyes, though she blinked them away quickly. Malik had never seen his mother cry, and it made his chest tighten. "Why us?" Lila asked. "Because sometimes life gives us moments to make a difference," Evelyn said, "and Malik gave me mine." The next week was a whirlwind. Movers arrived to help the Johnsons transition to their new home, a cozy townhouse with bright windows, a small garden, and enough space for everyone to finally breathe. Amina was thrilled to have her own room, and Malik marveled at the sight of a fridge stocked with food. For the first time in years, Ms. Lila allowed herself to relax. With Evelyn's connections, she landed a job as an office administrator with regular hours and benefits. No more late-night diner shifts. Despite the changes, Malik remained grounded. He continued to help around the neighborhood, carrying groceries for elderly residents and playing basketball with the younger kids. Evelyn visited often, offering guidance and encouragement. She even began mentoring Malik, teaching him about business, philanthropy, and the importance of giving back. "You have a bright future ahead, Malik," Evelyn told him one evening as they sat on the porch. "I see in you the potential to do great things." "Like you?" he asked. Evelyn smiled. "No, better than me." But not everyone welcomed the Johnsons' good fortune. In the old neighborhood, whispers began to spread about Malik's sudden change in circumstances. Some accused the family of being lucky. Others claimed they had cheated or begged for charity. Malik heard the comments and felt the sting, but he kept quiet. What mattered was that his family was finally safe and happy, and no matter what anyone said, he knew he had done the right thing. The morning sun filtered through the curtains of the Johnsons' new home, casting warm streaks of light on the walls. Amina sat cross-legged on the living room floor, assembling a jigsaw puzzle while humming a cheerful tune. Malik, now freshly showered and dressed in a clean pair of jeans and a crisp white shirt, sat on the couch flipping through a worn library book on science experiments. "Look at us," Amina giggled. "We're so fancy now." Malik chuckled, but his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. While Amina's excitement for their new life was infectious, a part of him felt uneasy. The whispers from their old neighborhood had begun to weigh on him. Just the day before, he had run into Mr. Carter, the elderly man who ran the corner store. Malik had always been on good terms with him, but this time, Carter's tone was colder. "New house? New clothes?" Carter had muttered. "Must be nice to have friends in high places." Malik had tried to explain that it wasn't about luck or favors, but Carter waved him off, shaking his head. "People don't just give you something for nothing, boy. Remember that." Those words lingered in Malik's mind. He trusted Evelyn's intentions, but doubts began to creep in. What if there were strings attached to her generosity? What if people were right, that his family hadn't earned this new life? Later that day, Malik met Evelyn at a local park where they often talked. She sat on a bench under the shade of an old oak tree, looking serene in her simple gray cardigan and slacks. She greeted him with her usual warm smile, but Malik hesitated before sitting down. "You seem troubled," Evelyn said, her perceptive gaze cutting straight through him. Malik sighed, staring at the ground. "People are talking about us, about me. They think we don't deserve all this, that you're just giving us stuff for no reason." Evelyn's expression softened. "And you're starting to believe them?" "I don't know," Malik admitted. "It just feels weird, like maybe they're right. Why me? Why my family? There are so many other people out there who need help." Evelyn leaned forward, folding her hands together. "Malik, let me tell you a story." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "Years ago, when I was young and ambitious, I had a chance to help a struggling single mother in my neighborhood. She worked 2 jobs and still couldn't make ends meet. I offered to pay her rent for a year to give her some breathing room. But do you know what she said?" Malik shook his head. "She said, 'Why me? There are others worse off.'" Evelyn smiled faintly. "It's a common question, but the truth is, kindness doesn't need a justification. I helped her because I could, because it was the right thing to do. Just like you helped me that day on the street." Malik frowned. "But what about the people who think it's not fair?" "They'll always be there," Evelyn said simply. "Some people can't accept when others succeed, especially when it challenges their own sense of fairness. But fairness doesn't mean everyone gets the same thing. It means everyone gets what they need." Her words were comforting, but Malik still felt the weight of judgment pressing down on him. That evening, as Malik walked back home, he passed by a group of teenagers from his old neighborhood. They were sitting on the stoop of a dilapidated apartment building, their laughter echoing down the street. "Hey, it's the Golden Boy," one of them shouted, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Yo, Malik, when you gonna buy us a mansion, huh?" another jeered. Malik clenched his fists, heat rising to his cheeks. He wanted to yell back, to defend himself, but he kept walking. At home, he found his mother sitting at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a steaming cup of tea. She looked up as he entered, her face weary but kind. "Rough day?" she asked. Malik nodded and slumped into a chair. "Why do people have to be so mean?" Lila sighed. "Because not everyone can see what's in your heart, baby. They don't know what you've been through or why you make the choices you do." "But it's not fair," Malik muttered. "I didn't ask for any of this. I just wanted to help someone." And that's what makes you different, Lila said, reaching out to touch his hand. Don't let their doubts change who you are. You're my son, and you've got a good heart. That's all that matters. Her words settled something in Malik. He realized he couldn't control what others thought or said, but he could control his own actions. Dados Barsi. The next morning, Malik made a decision. With Evelyn's encouragement, he started volunteering at a local community center, helping kids with homework and organizing food drives. He wanted to prove, not to others, but to himself, that he was worthy of the opportunities he had been given. Slowly, the whispers began to fade, replaced by murmurs of admiration. People saw Malik not as someone who got lucky, but as someone who was using his blessings to uplift others. Still, Malik knew the journey wasn't over. The shadows of doubt might always linger, but he had found his way forward, with gratitude in his heart and purpose in his steps. The community center buzzed with energy. Children darted between rooms, their laughter echoing through the worn halls, while volunteers shuffled boxes of donated clothes and canned goods. Malik stood at a long folding table in the main room, carefully sorting through stacks of school supplies. "Hey, Malik!" called Mr. Grayson, the center's director. He was a broad-shouldered man with a booming voice that could fill any room. "Got a minute?" "Sure," Malik replied, setting down a bundle of notebooks. "Mr." Grayson motioned for Malik to follow him to his office, a small, cluttered space with walls plastered in faded posters from past events. He gestured for Malik to sit. "I've been watching you these past few weeks, Mr." Grayson began, leaning back in his chair. "You've been doing good work here. The kids love you, and the volunteers respect you." "Thanks," Malik said, scratching the back of his neck. "But I want to know something," Mr. Grayson continued, his tone growing serious. "Why are you doing this? Most kids your age wouldn't spend their afternoons working here when they could be out having fun." Malik hesitated, then took a deep breath. I just want to give back. A lot of people have helped me and my family lately, and this feels like the right thing to do." Mr. Grayson nodded slowly. "That's a good answer. But remember, giving back isn't just about helping others. It's about building connections, bridges, you could say, between people, between communities. You keep that in mind, and you'll go far." Over the next few months, Malik became a familiar face at the center. He tutored younger kids, organized basketball games, and even spearheaded a project to repaint the walls of the center's main hall. Evelyn, ever the quiet benefactor, supplied paint and supplies without drawing attention to herself. One afternoon, as Malik was helping a boy named Terrence with his math homework, a woman approached him. She looked frazzled, her hair pulled into a messy bun, and her eyes darted nervously around the room. "Excuse me," she said, clutching a worn bag to her chest. "You're Malik, right?" Malik stood, nodding. "Yes, ma'am. Can I help you?" She hesitated, then thrust the bag toward him. "I heard you're the one who helped organize the school supply drive. My son needed these, but I can't afford to pay for them right now. I was wondering if—" Malik gently interrupted her, smiling. "You don't have to explain. Take whatever you need." Tears filled the woman's eyes. "Thank you. You don't know what this means to us." As she left, Terrence looked up at Malik. "Why'd she cry? You didn't do anything bad." Malik knelt beside him. "Sometimes people cry when they're happy or relieved. Helping someone can mean more than you realize." Terrence thought about this for a moment, then grinned. "I want to help people too." Meanwhile, back at home, Evelyn continued to quietly guide the Johnson family. She visited weekly, checking in on Amina's progress in school and helping Mrs. Lila navigate her new job. "I never thought I'd work in an office," Lila admitted one evening as she and Evelyn shared a cup of tea in the kitchen. "It's different, but it's nice to come home before the kids go to bed." "You've earned this," Evelyn said, "and you've set a strong example for them." Lila glanced toward the living room, where Malik was reading to Amina. "They're good kids. I just want them to have better than I did." Evelyn smiled knowingly. "You're already making that happen." One Saturday, Evelyn invited Malik to a charity gala she was hosting. At first, Malik balked at the idea. "Me? At a fancy party? I don't even own a suit." But Evelyn insisted, and by the time the evening rolled around, Malik found himself dressed in a sharp black blazer and tie, standing awkwardly in the middle of a grand ballroom. Chandeliers sparkled overhead, and well-dressed guests mingled, their laughter and conversation blending into a symphony of wealth and sophistication. Evelyn appeared beside him, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. "Relax, Malik. You belong here." "Doesn't feel like it," he muttered. Evelyn chuckled. "That's exactly why you need to be here. These people need to see someone like you. Someone real." Throughout the evening, Evelyn introduced Malik to business leaders, philanthropists, and community organizers. At first, he stumbled over his words, overwhelmed by the polished smiles and firm handshakes. But as the night went on, he found his footing. He shared his story, how he had helped a stranger in need, and how that simple act had changed his life. By the end of the night, several guests had pledged to support the community center, and one even offered Malik a summer internship at a local nonprofit. "You did well," Evelyn said as they left the gala. Malik smiled. "I think I get it now." "Get what?" "Building bridges," he said. "It's not just about helping people, it's about connecting them to something bigger." Evelyn beamed with pride. "Exactly." The first sign of trouble came on an ordinary Thursday afternoon. Malik was helping Terrence and a few other kids at the community center when his phone buzzed. He pulled it out, frowning at the unknown number. "Hello?" Malik answered, stepping away from the table. A sharp voice cut through the line. "Is this Malik Johnson?" "Yes. Who's this?" "This is Rachel Owens from the New Orleans Tribune. I'm a reporter working on a story about Evelyn Cartwright's recent philanthropic activities. I'd like to ask you some questions about your relationship with her." Malik's stomach sank. I'm not sure what you mean." "There's been some talk about Ms. Cartwright's sudden involvement in your family's affairs. People are wondering if this is just another one of her publicity stunts. Do you think she's using you to improve her image?" Malik froze, his mind racing. He wanted to defend Evelyn, but the reporter's words planted a seed of doubt. Why had Evelyn chosen his family? Was there something he was missing? I don't think so," Malik stammered. "Would you care to elaborate?" Rachel pressed, but Malik mumbled an excuse and hung up. And that evening, Malik found Evelyn waiting for him at the community center. She greeted him warmly, but he noticed the tension in her eyes. "You heard, didn't you?" Evelyn asked softly. "Yeah," Malik admitted, sinking into a chair. "A reporter called me today. She said people think you're just using us." Evelyn sighed and sat across from him. "Malik, I won't lie to you. When I started helping you, I didn't think about how it might look to others. But now that people are talking, it's bringing attention to my past." "Your past?" Malik asked, confused. Evelyn nodded. "Years ago, I made some mistakes in my business. People accuse me of being cold, ruthless, even selfish. I've worked hard to change that, but not everyone believes me. Helping you and your family was never about my image, but some people are determined to see it that way." Malik frowned. "So what do we do?" Evelyn smiled faintly. "We keep doing what we've been doing. Actions speak louder than rumors." But the rumors didn't die down. Over the next few weeks, Malik noticed the change in how people treated him. At the community center, some parents began to avoid him, their polite smiles tinged with suspicion. Even at school, a few classmates whispered behind his back. "Must be nice being Miss Cartwright's pet project," one boy sneered during lunch. Malik ignored him, but the words stung. "Gee." Evelyn, meanwhile, faced mounting pressure from the media. Headlines questioned her motives, and critics accused her of exploiting Malik's story for her own gain. Determined to fight back, Evelyn invited a local journalist she trusted to the community center. The reporter, Grace Morales, spent the day observing Malik and Evelyn's work. She watched as Malik patiently helped a young girl learn to read, as Evelyn spoke with volunteers about expanding their programs, and as the two of them strategized ways to bring in more donations. "I see why this means so much to both of you," Grace said, as the day ended. "But are you ready for the backlash? Some people won't change their minds, no matter what you do." "We're not doing this to change minds," Evelyn replied firmly. "We're doing it to change lives." The article Grace published painted a heartfelt picture of Evelyn's and Malik's partnership. It emphasized Malik's genuine compassion and Evelyn's sincere efforts to give back. While not all the criticism disappeared, the story silenced many of the doubters. One rainy afternoon, as Malik walked home from the community center, he found Mr. Carter, the corner store owner, struggling to lift a heavy box from the back of his van. "Need help, Mr. Carter?" Malik asked, hurrying over. The older man hesitated, then nodded. Together, they carried the box inside. As they set it down, Mr. Carter sighed. "Listen, boy," he said gruffly, "I might have been hard on you before, but I've been watching. You're a good kid. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Malik smiled, the weight on his shoulders easing slightly. "Thanks, Mr. Carter. That means a lot." At home, Malik shared the news with his mother and Amina. Ms. Lila hugged him tightly, her voice thick with pride. "I told you, baby. Just keep being you, and people will see the truth." The turning point came during a fundraiser Evelyn and Malik organized at the community center. Local businesses donated goods, volunteers cooked food, and families from all over the neighborhood showed up. Malik gave a speech, his voice steady despite the nerves fluttering in his chest. "I'm just a kid," he said. "I didn't plan for any of this, but I've learned that helping people isn't about what you have, it's about what you're willing to give. Ms. Cartwright gave my family a chance when we needed it most, and now we're doing everything we can to give back. That's what matters." The crowd erupted in applause. Malik spotted Evelyn in the back, her eyes glistening with tears. "You did good, kid," she said later, patting his shoulder. As the night ended, Malik stood outside the center, watching the last guests leave. He felt something new, a quiet confidence that hadn't been there before. The trials he'd faced had only strengthened his resolve. Evelyn joined him, her voice soft. "You've built something real here, Malik. Don't ever forget that." "I won't," Malik said, smiling. "And I'm just getting started." The sun rose over New Orleans, painting the city in hues of gold and orange. Malik was already up, seated at the small desk in his room, scribbling ideas in a spiral notebook. Over the months, his efforts at the community center had grown beyond tutoring and organizing events. He was brainstorming ways to make a deeper, lasting impact, not just for his family, but for the entire neighborhood. "Malik, breakfast is ready," his mother called from the kitchen. He closed the notebook and hurried to join Amina and Ms. Lila at the table. The smell of fresh pancakes greeted him, and he grinned as Amina piled syrup on her plate. "Big day ahead?" his mother asked as she poured him a glass of orange juice. "Kind of," Malik said. "We're meeting with some local business owners about starting a mentorship program for kids." Ms. Lila raised an eyebrow. "Look at you, Mr. Organizer. I'm proud of you, baby." Malik smiled, her words filling him with warmth. At the community center, Malik greeted a small group of local business owners, including Mrs. Harper, who ran a popular bakery, and Mr. Singh, the owner of a neighborhood hardware store. Evelyn stood beside him, offering her quiet support. "Thanks for coming," Malik began, his voice steady. "I wanted to talk about how we can support kids in the community, not just with supplies or events, but with skills and opportunities. We could start a mentorship program where you teach them about running a business or learning a trade. Miss Harper smiled. That's a wonderful idea, Malik. I could show them how to bake and run a shop. And I could teach them carpentry and basic repairs, Mr. Singh added. The discussion flowed smoothly, with everyone contributing ideas. By the end of the meeting, Malik felt a surge of excitement. This was bigger than anything he had done before, but he was ready. Word of the mentorship program spread quickly. Within weeks, kids from all over the neighborhood were signing up. Malik watched as Terrence and a group of younger children learned to knead dough in Ms. Harper's bakery, while another group practiced using tools at Mr. Singh's shop. "Oh man, this is cool," Terrence said one afternoon, his hands covered in flour. "You really thought of all this, Malik?" "I just wanted to give you guys a chance," Malik said, grinning. "You've got big dreams, right?" This is where they start. The program's success caught the attention of city officials, who invited Malik to speak at a youth empowerment conference. Standing in front of a packed auditorium, Malik shared his story, the challenges his family faced, the kindness of a stranger, and the power of giving back. "We can't change everything overnight," Malik said, his voice filled with conviction. "But every act of kindness, every opportunity we create, it all ripples out, and those ripples can grow into something big, something unstoppable." The crowd erupted into applause, and Malik felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Back at home, Amina ran to greet him as he walked through the door. "Malik, you were on TV!" she exclaimed, her face glowing with pride. Mrs. Lila stood in the kitchen, her arms crossed but a soft smile on her face. "I think my boy's becoming a celebrity," she teased. "Not a celebrity," Malik said, laughing. "Just trying to help." "Well, whatever you're doing, you're making a difference," his mother said, "and that's what matters." Evelyn continued to support Malik's efforts, though she began to step back, letting him take the lead. "You don't need me as much anymore," she told him one evening as they walked through the neighborhood. "I still need you," Malik replied, "but I get what you mean. I've got to figure out my own way now." Evelyn smiled, proud of how far he had come. "You've got a gift, Malik. Keep using it." Months passed, and the ripple effect of Malik's work began to show. The mentorship program inspired other neighborhoods to start similar initiatives, and the community center expanded its services with donations pouring in from local businesses and individuals. Malik's neighborhood, once overlooked and struggling, now buzzed with hope and opportunity. Kids who had once felt trapped by their circumstances began to dream bigger, their futures brighter than ever. And one evening, as Malik sat on the porch of their townhouse, Amina joined him, her head resting on his shoulder. "You know you're my hero, right?" she said softly. Malik laughed, wrapping an arm around her. "I'm just your big brother." "No," Amina insisted. "You're more than that. You're everybody's hero." Malik looked out at the street, where laughter and music filled the air. He thought about the journey that had brought them here, the struggles, the doubts, and the moments of kindness that had changed everything. "I'm just getting started," Malik said, a determined smile on his face. A year had passed since Malik's journey with Evelyn began, and the changes in his neighborhood were undeniable. The once cracked sidewalks were now lined with flowers planted by kids from the mentorship program. Murals painted by local artists adorned the walls, telling stories of hope, resilience, and community. Malik stood in the middle of the community center's new expansion wing, watching a group of children play a lively game of basketball on the freshly painted court. The center, now renamed the Evelyn Cartwright Community Hub, had become a beacon for the neighborhood, a place where dreams were nurtured and lives were transformed. Evelyn stood beside him, her expression a mix of pride and bittersweet nostalgia. "You've built something incredible here, Malik," she said. "I hope you know that." Malik glanced at her. "We've built something incredible. I couldn't have done it without you." Evelyn smiled, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes, a sense that her role in his life was coming to an end. Later that evening, the community gathered for the official ribbon-cutting ceremony of the new wing. Families filled the courtyard, enjoying music, food, and laughter under strings of twinkling lights. Malik stood on the stage, microphone in hand, as he prepared to address the crowd. He cleared his throat, feeling the weight of everyone's eyes on him. "When I was younger," he began, "I used to think life was just about survival. My family didn't have much, and every day felt like a battle to make it through. But then something happened that changed everything, a simple act of kindness." He looked out at the crowd, his gaze landing on Evelyn, who stood near the back. "I met someone who believed in me, who saw potential in me when I couldn't see it in myself. That one moment set off a chain reaction. It reminded me that even the smallest gestures can have the biggest impact." The audience listened intently, their expressions a mix of admiration and emotion. "This isn't just about me," Malik continued. "It's about all of us. It's about building something together, something that lasts, because when we lift each other up, we create a legacy that no one can take away, and that legacy starts with kindness." The crowd erupted into applause, and Malik stepped back, his heart full. As the evening wound down, Evelyn pulled Malik aside. She handed him a small envelope, her expression unreadable. "What's this?" Malik asked, opening it cautiously. Inside was a check made out to him for an amount that made his jaw drop. "This is for your future," Evelyn said. "For college, for your dreams, whatever you need to take the next step." Malik shook his head, his eyes wide. "Evelyn, I can't." "You can," she interrupted gently. "And you will. You've already proven you know how to make the most of what you're given. This is my final gift to you, Maliki. The rest is up to you." Her words carried a finality that made Malik's throat tighten. "You're leaving, aren't you?" Evelyn nodded, her smile tinged with sadness. "It's time for me to step back. This is your story now." Malik swallowed hard, then pulled her into a tight hug. "Thank you for everything." Evelyn's voice was soft but firm. "Don't thank me. Just keep building." In the months that followed, Malik took on new challenges with the same determination that had carried him this far. He finished high school with top grades and was accepted into a prestigious university on a full scholarship. There he studied community development and nonprofit management, determined to amplify the work he had started. Back home, the programs he had helped create continued to thrive, led by the very people he had once mentored. Terrence, now a teenager, stepped up as a leader in the mentorship program, inspiring younger kids just as Malik had inspired him. Evelyn's presence remained, even in her absence. The community center bore her name, and her legacy was etched into every life she had touched. Years later, Malik returned to New Orleans after earning his degree. He stood outside the community center, now bustling with activity, and marveled at how far it had come. "Back where it all began," he said to himself. A group of kids ran past him, laughing and shouting as they headed toward the basketball court. One of them paused, looking up at him with wide eyes. "Hey, are you Malik Johnson?" the boy asked breathlessly. Malik chuckled. "That's me." "My mom says you started all this," the boy said, gesturing to the center. "She says you're like a hero or something." Malik knelt so he was eye level with the boy. "I'm no hero. I just had a little help, and now it's my turn to help others." The boy grinned and ran off, leaving Malik alone with his thoughts. As he watched the center come alive with activity, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The ripple effect of his choices had grown into a wave, transforming not just his life, but the lives of countless others. And he knew, in his heart, that the legacy he and Evelyn had built would continue to shine, a beacon of light for generations to come.